Hey there guys, how's it going? For today, in today's video, I'll be discussing which are the best precons in my opinion for new players. Alright guys, so we're discussing which of the decks I would suggest if you're going to help somebody that's new to Magic, new to EDH, what have you, get into playing EDH and starting playing this great game that we all really enjoy. I would suggest not really specific like eras or years or whatnot. I'm not really going to discuss like which one's the best value or whatnot, whatever, all that sort of stuff. I'm just saying from a purely play perspective what you should look for when you're thinking about somebody that's going to start playing the game. And what I think you should do is look for precon decks that are the most simple and basic for somebody to pick up. Yes, they're not going to be as exciting and as interesting and are sometimes the weakest of the decks that are among some of the decks that are released among the others. But that's sort of the point. You're giving them kid gloves to a sense, to a degree. This is maybe, like, again, this might be somebody who's never played Magic the Gathering before, a young kid, or maybe a very old person, perhaps your grandma, maybe, or something. You don't know. Somebody who, maybe is in, their 20s to 30s, who knows, but they've still never played this game, or maybe never played Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or anything really like that. Maybe they've played some video games or whatnot, whatever. But again, the rules and the interactions and the decision making that goes on in EDH is not something that a lot of people can handle right off the bat. So something simple and basic, straightforward, straight ahead. You don't really have to think. You don't really have to decide too much what's going on and what you have to do and whatnot. Is the best thing to find for somebody that's just starting out in the game, because again, they're not going to really know what's going on or whatnot, and having tutors and combos and all of these different things and whatnot doesn't really help a person that's just starting the game. They need a deck that's just, you can pull out of the box, play, and you don't really have to know very much about the game for the most part to play it, because again, you don't know how much they're going to know about the game. And yeah, again, some people are going to be like, go, oh wow, this deck sounds really cool or really interesting or whatnot, but you have to reel them in a little bit, because again, even if that sounds cool, it's like, well, yes, that might be really cool, but you don't know how to play the game yet, or you don't know how to play EDH yet. You might have played, some games, pre-release or draft or something, but you don't know how the group dynamic really affects the game and how politics works into it and things like that, because you've only played 1v1 Magic and things like that. So it's completely different again when you're playing EDH, plus everyone's at a different starting life total. There's so much more going on, and that you've got to pay attention to a lot more stuff going on. It's not just your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. It's, okay, it's Steve's turn, now it's Alice's turn, now it's Laura's turn, and now it's my turn. Okay, cool. Now what do I do? Now it's, whoever, Steve's turn again, whatever, Alice, whoever. I said I've forgotten already, but whatever. You know what I mean. And then maybe Eloise or whatever is sitting over there and is just like, damn, I've missed my land drop. Now what am I going to do? And is just kind of sitting there for 5 minutes or something, umming and erring and going, what do I do? And things like that. Like, again, or you can do that too, but again, it's one of those things. Or the player that we're talking about can do that as well. So they can just be like, I don't know, I didn't realize that was good or bad, but it seems like I can't do anything right now. and things like that. So again, basic simple decks like Voltron decks, aggro decks. Tribal decks are really good as well because they're usually basically aggro as well. So just like I attack you with my stuff, dot decks are the easiest decks to sort of like grasp. All you've got to really know is, okay, my opponent's life totals are going down. That seems good, and I have some stuff to hit them with. And all I've got to know with like Voltron, maybe one little rule is don't forget that saying 21 damage from from their commander specifically is lethal damage to somebody, and little things like that. So just remembering that again, like even if somebody, again, as I sort of said, wants to try something a little bit more complex, it's up to them at the end of the day. But just say, look, this is your first foray or whatever into the game or into this format. So just start with this, and we're just going to play a game, and see how we go and whatnot. And it's one of those things. If you've got a spare deck lying around, you can give someone that deck. I think precons are a really great way to go. But if you have a spare like deck that you've maybe thrown together and is probably as powerful as a precon, that's fine as well. It doesn't really matter what the player starts with, as long as it's a very basic deck. For the most part, it's fine. Precons are usually a fairly basic deck, as long as, again, you probably go for the decks that are just straightforward sort of aggro decks, not spellslinger combo style decks or whatnot. Those decks are going to be too much for a player like this to probably follow through. Chulane and some of those other commanders, they seem to be like okay as well, because it's just, I play a thing, I get a card, and I play a land. Anything that helps you draw cards, play lands, or ramps you or draws you cards is also a pretty decent commander to start with, because again, most of the rest of the deck will be, here's my stuff, I hit you with my stuff for the most part, and your commander just gives you that extra value that you sort of need to keep, getting cards, playing lands, getting ahead, staying in the game, whatnot, recovering, whatnot, all of that sort of thing. So those commanders can also be really, really good. I wouldn't suggest 100% Tulane, because it can be a little bit hard to follow sometimes, especially when you upgrade it. But like out of the box, it can be still somewhat like a lot of triggers and a lot of like, okay, we've got to take this one step at a time, and don't forget you have to play the land now and stuff like that. You can't just, oh, well, now I've drawn a land after this, or drawn a land from that, or whatever, now I'll play it. No, you can't do that, because it's not part of this ability, or whatnot, things like that. Just remembering those little rules interactions as well, because again, when a new player comes in, they're going to think they can basically do whatever they want for the most part, or it seems like that, or the rules aren't exactly like 100% clear sometimes, or you say, oh, well, you could do this first and then do that, and then you like make sure you have a land in hand or whatnot. But again, some of these things are, when you cast it, and you actually have to do it in that order. It's when you cast, then when you enter, then whatever, like after that. So yeah, like just keep those things on memory. And plus, again, when you play the land from Tulane and cards like that, because it's when it's cast, you play the land first or whatnot. So little things like that. Just remembering that if you are playing anything with landfall, the landfall doesn't trigger, things like that. So just helping players know that how things work, and like if somebody goes and makes a mistake, it's like one of those things that is just like, oh yeah, you didn't realize. Like if somebody says, I'm going to cast a creature, and then somebody says, well, I'll kill your creature, and then you say, oh, well, you actually can't kill my creature because it's not on the battlefield or whatever yet, it's not resolved, because, you know, somebody might have a counter spell or whatnot, so it's still on, quote unquote, on the stack, because you've said in response to me casting it, essentially. So that's a minor little thing that some people forget about and things like that. So also just helping new players through some of the minor rules issues or whatnot, and going, well, you can't actually do that because of this, or you can't do that because of this. You've got to let me do something else, or you've got to let me change phases or whatnot, or you've got to respond to what somebody else is doing, or you've got to have a counterspell specifically. So don't be too hard, again, on new players. But yes, absolutely, precons are a great way to go. They're not obviously the best way every single time. There are some precons, as I sort of said, that I wouldn't recommend for new players. But once you start getting established, some of the more difficult precons might be, you know, worth looking at. And you might want to go, well, what I'll do is I'll buy those precons now, but what I'll do is I'll sort of set them aside and say, well, this one looks much more difficult than this one, or I don't really know what this one's doing or whatnot. So what we'll do is we'll play the most simple one first, and then we'll ramp up slowly and go, okay, well, what looks like the most complicated sort of one? You know, like if you have the Adrix and Nev deck, that one is a little bit complicated, but it's not that complicated. There are some decks that are fairly complicated, and then there are decks that are extremely complicated, especially like Planeswalker decks and whatnot, things like that. Or if you have a Planeswalker as your commander, things like that. Like sometimes that could be a little bit like, oh, don't forget you can do your Planeswalker ability, you know, at any time. Basically, you cast a sorcery as soon as you cast it. So they might be like, oh, I didn't realize that I could actually activate it the first turn or whatnot, because you can't activate regular commanders or do anything with regular commanders unless they have haste on the first turn normally, or unless you have Greaves or Boots or something, things like that. So do keep those sorts of things in mind, because again, that is also helpful to new players. But anyway, yeah, I think that's pretty much all I want to discuss here is with this. So yeah, you guys can let me know what you guys think about, you know, which precons are best for new players or whatnot. If you agree or disagree, I don't really mind. You can try to debate me, whatever, in the comments below. I'll be sure to try to respond to all the comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about all the geeky things that we love. And yeah, I'll just see you down there in those comments, or I'll see you in the next one. Hey, you've just finished watching one of our videos. A bunch of other videos are popping up on your screen now for you to check out, so why not check them out?